Most people don't use, most fluoridating systems don't use sodium fluoride, which is that byproduct anymore. They use hydrofluorosulfuric acid. Hydrofluoric sulfuric acid is now a byproduct of the fertilizer processing industry. And it has at least 3 radioactive molecules in it. And that's what goes into the water supply, supposedly to make kids' teeth healthy. Do you know where one of the first places they used fluoride on planet Earth was?
The gulags in Russia or the concentration camps?
Concentration camps in Nazi Germany. It affects a part of the brain that makes people stand up for themselves and makes them aggressive.
Oh, right.
Farmers also use it for their bulls to keep them docile. Does a great job of keeping people docile. Could you imagine 100 years ago, the people who lived in America putting up with what's been happening the last couple of decades in our country? Could you imagine that? Wouldn't have happened, but it's happening today. And most of the country is fluoridated. It's time for us to wake up. Time for us to stop that. I mean, and by the way, don't believe a word I'm saying. Go check it out for yourself. You know, if 1 or 2 ideas are different than the way you've been thinking, I invite you, don't accept my word. Go do the research. You know, we've got the internet. It's an awesome tool. Go do the research. Check it out for yourself. And then start to integrate that and start to share it with others. It's powerful when you do that. Questions?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
You know, Branson's in the area around here. I hear the water's pretty good. Like where we're at, they don't put chlorine or fluoride. It just
Awesome.
comes right out of a well. But we still run it through a machine. But how about out there in Theodosia? You have good water out there?
We distill our water. We've got pretty clean water, but very hard water. We're about 23 grains hard.
Yeah.
So we shower in it. It's pretty chemical free. We have it tested, and it's in pretty good shape. But I don't drink it.
Well, also hear that most of the fluoride today is coming from China.
You know, I hadn't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me. You look at what's coming out of China. I just learned the other day that PayPal is owned by a Chinese corporation. Hey, you know, when we have quantitative easing, you know what quantitative easing is?
Oh, yeah.
Print worthless paper by the billions and flood the market with it. How do you flood the market? You buy people's stuff with it. And then we pass that off to other people as something of value. What do you suppose they're going to do with it? They're going to come back and buy everything, because otherwise it's worthless. And so, yeah, it's pretty bizarre what's happening all the way around. And this all fits together into a system of, when the non-being mind, a mind that is not fueled by love, takes over any system, you can expect that system to be about destroying people. It will language about the wonderful things it's doing, but it will be, in its roots, about destroying people. Because one disconnected from life, when they come to a position of power and control, can't stand having life around them. They have to get rid of life. Because life empowers, and what empowers strengthens. And what strengthens forces us out of denial and shows us whatever we've been hiding from ourselves. So it becomes of key importance to understand how that process works. Sam.
What are the effects of high fructose corn syrup?
Say it again.
What are the effects of high fructose corn syrup on the body?
Well, if you look at sweeteners across the board, except for perhaps stevia, they're all, you know, some of the best aging, or pretty much all of the best aging research coming out, is saying that what extends life more than anything is keeping your blood sugar low. That high blood sugar creates a stress on every organ, and that's ultimately what causes death. And high fructose corn syrup, you know, there's such an epidemic in young people of diabetes that it's just criminal. And when you feed kids tablespoon upon tablespoon upon tablespoon of sugar, but far worse, high fructose corn syrup, you've got somebody that's going to be in big trouble. And of course, that trouble means money for somebody. Let's keep it rocking, keep it going. So my invitation would be to start to use more whole, natural sweeteners. You know, raw, natural honey has all kinds of nutrients in it, all kinds of anti-inflammatories, antibiotics. I don't know. What else is in that stuff that's awesome?
I don't know what all is in it, but I do know there's a lot of difference in that right there, what you can buy on the shelf in the supermarket.
Yes.
And a lot of people doesn't know this, but a great deal of your honey that's on the market comes from China
Yeah.
and India.
And here again, it's high fructose corn syrup.
It can be anything.
Yeah.
You got to know your provider. You got to know your farmer.
And some of that molasses.
Oh, have you got molasses over there too?
Yes.
Oh, molasses is awesome. Actually, I didn't know what molasses does until just a couple of years ago. Jeannie's parents have a farm in eastern Tennessee, and we made molasses, and it was awesome. We went and we cut sugar cane all day, and hauled it in the wagon, and ground it down, and put it through a press that takes this sweet green juice out. And then we spent about 15 hours boiling 125 gallons of it to get 12 gallons of molasses. Very, very nutrient dense and very alkalizing to the structure. One of the most alkalizing foods on the planet. If you look at the SAD diet and virtually everything that's in it, it's all acidifying. Now, if you understand pH, it's called the potential of hydrogen, but basically it's whether something's acid or base. Your blood pH has to be 7.35 to 7.45, and if you go outside of that range for even a couple of hours, you're dead. Period. And when you eat the SAD diet, virtually everything is acidifying. Sugar is acidifying, drugs are acidifying, white flour is acidifying. And of course, meat is amino acids. What is an acid? It's a condition that throws this pH off. So when you put an acidifying food into this structure, the first thing that the structure does is says, how, if we put the nutrients that are in this into the bloodstream, how is that going to affect our blood pH? If you sit down to an 8-ounce steak and a baked potato, you don't get much digestion, and what's left are amino acids and putrefaction. When that goes into or starts to head to the bloodstream, the structure says, how are we going to neutralize this to make this work within the blood system so that it doesn't kill us? Well, we have to find something to buffer the acid. The body starts to look around and says, what do you have that is the most alkalizing thing that we have an abundance of? Guess what it is? It's calcium. If you look at all the high meat-eating and dairy-eating countries in the world, they are all the highest levels of osteoporosis in the world. Finland was mentioned here last month, and all the wonderful dairy that's there. Go look at Finland's osteoporosis statistics. They're horrendous, like in multiples of dozens of countries where there is no dairy. Dairy is all acid-based. Now, dairy is an awesome food for dairy cows, for baby cows. But even the cow doesn't go to the adult species and suck from its tit when it becomes an adult from its own species, let alone any others. We're the only species on the planet that goes to the tit of another animal in adulthood and says, this is food. Now, when you look at calcium, yes, there is a lot of calcium in cow's milk. Man, it's just loaded. But there's a factor you need to recognize. You need to be able to get that calcium into the structure of the bone to make it work. Otherwise, it is simply a load on the system and creates calcification. Anybody ever heard of hardening of the arteries? That's calcification. Anybody ever heard of arthritis? That's calcification. What happens? Well, if I remember correctly, I think there's something like 27 different isotopes of calcium. Only 2 or 3 of them are absorbable, that is, can be put into human bone. Now let's say that we've got a building that the structure's getting weak and we've got to replace the bricks. And the bricks are all 3 by 3 by 3 bricks. And so somebody comes with a truckload of 10 by 10 by 10 bricks and puts them in the building. Have we strengthened the building? No. If you take useless calcium and stuff it in the cell, you just calcified the cell. You didn't build calcium or bone into the structure of the bone. You simply destroyed the cell. Cow's calcium can't get into human bone. It just can't be done. The mucus-producing properties are legend. If you take a look in the pediatric research, the research paper after research paper after research paper, get the kid off of cow products, and the asthma and the ear infections and the runny noses go away. Now, there's a principle in naturopathy that says, if you feed them, they will come. Now, we talk in this culture about contagious disease, and everybody's afraid of the contagious disease that might get them. Excuse me. Let me use an analogy. Let's imagine that we build a new subdivision with 1,000 homes in it. And one family moves into the neighborhood that has cats. Are cats contagious? Come on, Michael, don't be ridiculous. Of course, cats are not contagious. But let's think about this. Let's imagine that we've got somebody moves into the neighborhood with a male and a female cat. And of course, male and female cats will reproduce. And let's say a neighbor 4 doors down starts to put out milk and cat food every day. Is that neighbor going to appear to have caught cats? Are the cats contagious? No, if you give it food, they're going to come visit. Now let's say that every 3rd house in the subdivision puts out milk and cat food every day. After 6 months, what's going to happen? They're going to say, if the epidemiologist came in, they're going to say, there was a contagion of cats and 1/3 of the people in the neighborhood now have caught cats. There is no organism that can survive in an environment where there isn't a food supply. And I include bacteria and viruses. You don't have to be concerned about the latest contagion if you don't have a food supply. If you eat the standard American diet, you have an ample food supply. If you think the acidic thoughts of the culture and the standard thought structure that goes, let's go kill the bastards, then you have an ample food supply for the latest contagion in town. And when somebody introduces it into the community, it will go through the community like wildfire, and there will be absolutely no contagion whatsoever. But everybody that's got a food supply that puts their hand near it and puts it in their mouth is going to find those things multiply because they are well-fed, fat, and happy. Clean up your structure and remove what never belonged. There's another axiom of naturopathic medicine that says death begins in the colon. Again, if it smells like something crawled up inside of you and died, it's because it did. You must remove death from your colon. There's one case that I know of, actually it's in a book by a friend of mine who's now passed, but at the last time I saw him he was 83, we're on a platform together, and he was just as rocking as anybody that I knew. And his book is called Tissue Cleansing Through Bowel Management, Bernard Jensen. And he recounts the case of a man who on autopsy had a colon that weighed 65 pounds and was 11 inches in diameter. Believe me, this guy had a food supply. And when the colon, because of poor thinking habits and poor eating habits, goes into a defense posture, here's what the defense looks like. You eat a poorly combined meal, or you eat the most awesome, properly combined organic meal, you chew it properly, you drink no water, but you're enraged when you eat it, and that sends a message to your stomach and your colon. We've got some garbage coming, get out the defense team. What's the defense team? Well, you have a natural system in your structure that produces a thing called mucus. It's a thin, watery substance that is meant to lubricate. But when toxicity shows up, the mucus thickens. And it thickens in order to trap the toxicity and keep it out of the cell. That lays down anywhere in the structure that there's toxicity. It can be interstitial. It can be between cells within the structure. It primarily, for most people, is in the colon. And what happens is that mucus thickens, it traps the toxicity, then it dries out. It thickens, traps, dries out. Thickens, traps, dries out. And you end up with a colon that goes from the size it's designed to be to 11 inches in diameter. And I've worked with people, I used to guide people through the process that Bernard Jensen talks about in his book called the Kalima Program. I've worked with people who I've seen pass pieces of black rubber tires 6, 7, and 8 feet long from their colons. And it's just as tough if you tried to cut it as a piece of rubber tire that you see laying on the road that came off the truck. And that's because of those toxic layers that are laid down in the colon, and the system is never given a chance to address that. In the naturopathic system of things, a natural way to function is to fast 1 day a week. Why? Because that gives the structure the opportunity to do house cleaning. So you take one 24-hour period where you drink nothing but pure water. And then 3 days per quarter you fast. You have 3 days where you do nothing but pure distilled water for 3 days. It flushes, it cleanses, it gives the digestive system a rest. And then 1 week per year you fast. You'll read the teachings of a man named Yeshua from 2,000 years ago, and the disciples came to him and said, you know, we've been cleaning out, we've been throwing out all kinds of demons, but we ran across this guy and we couldn't do it. And what did he say? Ah, those ones only come out through prayer and fasting. Why fasting? Well, I couldn't document where it came from, but there's a tradition in my profession that says that the non-being part of the mind, the false egocentric self, is based and feeds directly off of the stomach. When you fast, it loses its power supply and it starts to weaken and dissolve. That's why fasting is part of virtually every spiritual tradition. By the way, when the man named Yeshua said prayer and fasting, the word prayer has nothing to do with putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog. Remember, change the meaning of a culture's words, you can destroy a culture. You take away every meaning that is important and you substitute something different. So we're told, pray, pray, pray. Pray as though your life depended upon it, because it does. Tell the Creator what the Creator should be doing for you today. Give Him orders and keep Him on track. You got it figured out. If He only knew, He'd take care of it. Well, interestingly enough, in the Aramaic language, the word prayer has nothing to do with putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog. The word prayer means, and this is usually a shock for people at first, to set a trap for God. What does that mean? Well, my background's in electronics, and with a side study in physics. And in the electronic field, what we know is that in order to capture a signal, you have to have a proper antenna, and the antenna has to be oriented correctly. Some of you, a few faces around here will remember when you used to have a crank on your TV antenna, right? And when you want to watch one channel, you cranked it in one direction, you want to watch another channel. How many remember that? Give away your age when you say yes. So, what are you doing there? You're setting a trap for channel 4 when you put it on channel 4. What happens if it's set for channel 2 and you try to watch channel 4? Channel 4's all snowy and weak. You don't have a strong enough signal. The trap isn't set properly. So your TV antenna is a trap for channel 4 when it's oriented properly. If it's set for 2, the picture's lousy. You crank it, you crank it, you crank it until it comes around to channel 4. And all of a sudden, when it locks in, you've got a perfect picture and perfect sound. You now have the perfect trap for channel 4. There's 100% signal strength, 100% energy exchange between the signal, the antenna coming into the TV, and you have a perfect picture and sound. You are not a physical device, you are not a physical being, you are an energetic being. When you are oriented properly, you know what they call a Chinese woman who gives birth to a child? Disoriented? I couldn't resist, excuse me. So when you are oriented properly, as a human, you become a trap for God. You become the space where active human life, that is love, shows up in the world. That's the key to high-level wellness. And so that becomes the first order of business. Certain things are only healed when there is the powerful active presence of love. Without it, I don't care what you do, that stuff isn't moving. And if you give the digestive system a rest, that you don't keep stuffing food in it, but you actually let it rest, the combination of those two things will break down anything in this structure that does not belong and lead to healing. And that healing will lead into the actual physiological regeneration of the tissue structure. You might remember in the book of Revelations, which again people have made it sound religious, and it's not about religion, it's just about how the whole system works. And they said, to he that overcomes, what is it you need to overcome? It is your propensity, which your culture brainwashed you to within the first few days or few months and years of your life, to live in hostility or fear. Unless you overcome that, you will not experience the results that come about from that. What did they say will happen? Will become a pillar in the temple of my God. What is that? Your structure. This is designed to be a device that traps or captures and expresses love. Kind of hard to tell the way our culture is going. Now other people say, well, does that mean you're one of those conspiracy theorists, Michael? Absolutely. And I can give you a piece of research to do tonight, and if you came back tomorrow night with your results, I guarantee 100% of the results would be absolutely the same. They'd be 100% reproducible all across the nation. That's about as good controlled research as you can get. Here's the experiment. I invite you to do it. When you get home tonight, I'm going to ask you to take a piece of paper and draw a 1/4-inch margin down one side of the page. I'm going to invite you to sit in front of your television set. You know that thing that a lot of people use to raise their children, babysit for them? Sit yourself in front of the TV set. Spend no more than 3 minutes on any station. Just flip from station to station to station. And every time that you hear a word that actually represents or resembles this awesome human life, this presence of love, then I invite you to put a check mark on the page in the 1/4-inch margin. And then every time you hear a word that represents hostility or fear, I invite you to put a check mark on the page. I guarantee you'll fill 10 pages with check marks from this side of the board before you'll fill 1/4-inch margin from this side of the board. Is there a conspiracy? Absolutely. There is a conspiracy of hostility and fear, and it destroys human life, and the average human life, I would offer, is lost by the age of 4. Those who are not functioning out of the active presence of love, excuse me folks, we're not human when we're not doing that. And the specialty of the world is to take that away from us. The only one who can take responsibility for having that restored is you. You're the only one who can sniff out and apply and use the tools to change that. Others will promise you that there's something outside of you that'll take care of it for you. Look at the people who follow that path and that belief system, and let me know how it's really working in their lives. How much time they're spending over here and how much time they're spending over here. Now, lest you think that's a little bit extreme, go back and look at the words of the man, the physicist who understood what I was talking about. And he said this, he said, the power of life and death is in your words. He who controls the words of the culture controls the lives or the non-lives of those who live in that culture. And most of us have abdicated responsibility and given it over to someone else, especially when it comes to the children. And again, I'll circle back to forgiving those things which never belonged in your structure is a key in the process. Eradicating from your vocabulary the words based in hostility or fear. Well, yeah, but Michael, you couldn't survive without that hostility and that fear and that war and that fight. Oh, really? You think that's true? I would offer that you're a creator. Now, if you're not a creator and you're not made in the image and likeness of the creator, this is a crazy idea. But you're a creator. And the words you use produce the results that you create in your life. If you get convinced to live in words based in hostility or fear, I guarantee you live in a home based in war, you live in a community based in war, and you live in a world based in war. And that is changeable. Those who are making megabucks, back to Jerry Maguire, show me the money, don't want you to know that. They want to keep you ignorant. If you go to the opening words in the book of John, which once again I offer is not a religious document, the words in Aramaic, we've been conned into thinking it's religion. It's not. The opening words do not say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. In Aramaic, what it says is, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. The thoughts, the words, the mind energy you engage in literally turn into the organic structure. They organize your physiology. And if they are words based in hostility or fear, you probably live in a lot of fear in your life, and you think that you need more pills to survive. I would offer that what's needed is for each of us to engage in a path of removing what never belonged. And what never belonged in this human system is what we have been brainwashed, overwhelmed with, and overloaded with. And it's time for us to shift and bring about a change to a critical mass where we function as humans. And I'd like to close before I open the floor again for questions with a story that comes, it's in the back of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And it's called Tell Me the Weight of a Snowflake. And it goes like this. Tell me the weight of a snowflake, a hawk asked a wild dove. Nothing more than nothing was the answer. In that case, the hawk said, I must tell you a marvelous story. I stood on the branch of a fir, and it began to snow. Not heavily, not a raging blizzard, just like in a dream without any violence. Since I had nothing better to do, I began to count the snowflakes dropping on the twigs and needles of my branch. When their number was 3,841,952, the next snowflake, nothing more than nothing, as you said, dropped onto the branch, and the branch broke off. The dove, or the hawk, having told his story, flew away. The dove, an expert on peace since Noah's time, thought about the story for a while, and then came forward with the thought, perhaps only one person's voice is missing for peace to come about in the world. Will that be your voice? Will you do what it takes to claim your human life, your birthright for high-level wellness? Or will you be run by the generations of hostility and fear and all the habits that have been acquired to avoid dealing with that? Our invitation to you is that you really, truly commit yourself to living a human life. And that's what's going to change our world. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Question. Yes, sir.
I've got two things that are unrelated to this
Two things unrelated, yes.
that I'd like you to speak on.
Okay.
One is the New Testament that was found in Arabic. And
Aramaic or Arabic? Arabic's a different language.
Aramaic.
Aramaic, yes. I'm the director of a foundation translating a copy of the oldest known New Testament in Aramaic into English. That's where my work comes from, is out of the ancient Aramaic.
And where is that now, and what's going on with that?
Well, if you go to my website, you can look at all 550 pages. We have pictures on the website of the whole manuscript, and there's a lot of material and information. What we've published so far from, it's called the Kabor's manuscript. We published a book called Enlightenment. Unfortunately, it's out of print. We don't have it with us. We've got copies of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and a series of 15 different DVDs that we carry that are different aspects of the work that I do. This particular presentation, this is kind of a window on a 2-hour video called Naturopathic Keys to Health. But the work that we do in that text, we're just doing some editing and getting ready to republish it. The book is called Enlightenment. If you want a copy of it, the book is broken down into 3 parts. There's an introduction that tells a little about the manuscript. where it was found, etc. Then in the center of the book, there are some select passages from the New Testament, and all of the key words are left in brackets in Aramaic. And then at the back of the book, there's a first century dictionary. So you can go back and look at what was the first century mind thinking when it spoke those words. So we get back to accurate definitions. For instance, one of my favorites out of that, in the Beatitudes, we're told that each of the Beatitudes say, blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they. That's a Greek idea. Nothing resembles that word in the Aramaic word tuvehun, which is the beginning of each of the Beatitudes. This word tuvehun must be an important word because this is the man's first public teaching, and he uses it repeatedly. It's a three-part word. What does it mean? In Aramaic, the word that's been translated out of the Matthew 5, the Beatitudes, that says, blessed are they, is tuvehun, and here's what it says. A latent neural structure implanted in your mind by God to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession, you who, and then each of the Beatitudes is a how-to. For instance, and we can tell that the Aramaic was prime, the primacy. A lot of people say, no, it was written in Greek, and then they translated it into Aramaic. Anybody here know any Semites? Can you imagine a Semite saying, well, we know how to read and write, but we should give this to the Greeks so they can write it down for us? I mean, that's just ludicrous on its face. But for instance, the first beatitude where we're said, those who are poor in spirit. A fly speck on a piece of paper changed the word home to poor. Now, think about it. Here's a man who says, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. I come to connect you to the spirit of truth. And somebody wants to convince us that we should be poor in spirit. Does that make any sense? No. What it says is, a latent neurostructure implanted by God to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession, you whose home is in the eternal forces from God. And then we're told it goes on to say, blessed are those mourning their wrongs, for they will be comforted. Now, anybody here ever get really warm heart cockles from sitting around mourning your wrongs? Did that ever really work for anybody? I don't think so. Here's what it says in Aramaic. A latent neural structure implanted by God to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession. You who love truth, who look into your errors in thought and the errors of your society, for you will be cured of mental stress. What's the number one complaint of people going to medical doctors today? Stress. 2,000 years ago, Yeshua said, here's how you cure it. You love truth enough. Now, most people who live in hostility or fear don't want much to deal with truth, don't want much to do with truth, pardon me. They've got their opinion, and they're not interested in the facts. Love of truth becomes key, and that's what the second beatitude says. Those who love truth and are willing to look into their errors in thought. Guess what the indicator is that you've got an error in thought going on? Your physiology is producing some form of hostility or fear. If it is, you're in trouble. You don't have to go any further. You don't have to figure out what they did, what you did, what anybody did. If your physiology is producing hostility or fear, you've got an indicator in you that there's something off the mark in you. Learn to understand what that is and correct it. And then, so that's your errors in thought, and then the errors of your society. Yes, we do, according to Yeshua, have to become a community of people that addresses the errors in the culture. Not from our own errors, but from a corrected and a healed mind. And that's what's going to change things. So that's just a little window on what we do with the Aramaic. And the whole body of work that I've developed over the last 45 years comes out of the Aramaic.
Could you also speak of the Rice Hall teepees? And what's
Say it again?
the Rice Hall teepees?
Rice Hall building. Okay, well, one of the things we've been doing some experimenting with, and it's kind of a slow project at Heartland, is that, we're not too far from the rice hall capital of the world, Stuttgart, Arkansas. Millions of pounds go into the waste receptacle, into the landfills every year of rice hulls. Rice hull is a lightweight. Now, rice grows in water. It's developed this hull to protect it. They take that hull off, they throw it away. It's an awesome building product. Bugs don't eat it. Mold won't grow on it. Nothing bothers it. You put it in a sandbag and you've got something that weighs, you can take a 10-year-old child and they can carry 20 of them. You build a structure, you put rebar. In fact, we'll be doing away with rebar soon. A friend of mine developed a product that's called basalt. Take a look on the internet. It weighs about 1/5 of what iron does, and it can be shipped in ribbons that are flexible and packageable, just like a package of ribbons. You put the right epoxy in it, and you've got something that's 5 times as strong in rebar as rebar and 1/3 the weight. So you stake this with rebar, and you put some sort of a finish, whether it's going to be masonry or whatever, and you've got a building. Third world countries use all kinds of rice. So that's something that we've been working on at Heartland, developing. As I say, it's coming along slowly, but we're looking for people who are interested in that. We do a work-study program each year that goes anywhere from 40 days to 2 years for people who want to learn the work that we're doing and the development. People who are interested in that. We're also looking at doing seaponics at Heartland. We've got a space set up, and it's just one of the plates that we spin. There was a medical doctor back in the 30s who, in doing research, discovered that marine animals didn't have any degenerative disease. And he started to look, and the conclusion he came to was the reason that they didn't is because the sea was so mineralized. And so he started to experiment with growing vegetables on dilutions of seawater and grew the most awesome vegetables, just absolutely amazing, on seawater. And so we're looking at developing some hydroponics at Heartland. So that's part of some of the projects that we're doing. Heartland, if you're not familiar with it, is our teaching center. It's in Theodosia. It used to be called Peter Cave Hollow Resort. About 23 years ago, bought the resort and converted it to a teaching center. We got about 17 acres and 15 buildings. We have a residential center. There are some flyers. Did you pass a flyer? You want to pass some flyers around? Here's a flyer that tells you about Heartland and our intensives. It has a schedule from a couple of years ago, but you can go to our website and look at the current schedule, what the dates are, but the intensive season is the same. We do a 65-day intensive there at Heartland each summer. It's a residential site. We do awesome, fresh and raw, totally vegan food at Heartland. And we actually published a book called Recipes that are our favorite recipes collected over the last 25 years or so. And the programs that we do work exchanges. We do a fee-based thing for people who want to do intensives. We're happy to work with people. And as I say, when we travel, we're open to invitations anywhere on the planet. We pay our own expenses. The workshops are done free because we're committed to putting the tools into people's hands, whether people have money or not. Gene?
I just thought you were talking about cows a minute ago, but talk about the protein molecule, the size of your sheep and goat.
Yeah, Jeannie's just mentioning that the calcium the protein molecule in cow's dairy. If you want to build a 2,000-pound body from a couple hundred pounds in a year, great, it's awesome. And you look at the expanding girth. It was I think it was Wrigley Field. They took all the seats out, and they I think the stats were that when they put the new seats in, they had to reduce each row by 5 seats because of the expanding width of the human derriere. Primarily because people are filling their bodies with dairy. Great for building 2,000-pound bodies. And it's also addictive. If you take a look and do some research, there's a thing called casomorphine. It's a literal morphine molecule, and people who have to have their X number of glasses of milk a day are addicted to the morphine in the milk. And the calcium, or the protein molecule, is too big for the structure to break down. It's a very difficult molecule for the human structure to break down, so it tends to lead to a whole other host of problems. On the other hand, goat's milk is almost identical to mother's milk in protein content, in structure, mineral content, etc. It's almost identical. And sheep's milk the same. And by the way, Sam's Club has an awesome goat's cheese. We use goat's cheese if we want to use cheese. And it is they have where most of the grocery stores are like $6 for a 3.5 ounce container. They have a pound log for $6.95, and it's really good, awesome goat's cheese. So. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 2 things. First of all, the lines in the eye,
Yes.
the straight ones, what color did you say they were?
they're white fibers. If you look closely at the eye, and it's easier to see on a blue eye than a dark colored eye, but they're white fibers, and they tend, if the constitution is strong, the fibers are very straight and very close, tightly packed together. When the constitution is weakening, the fibers tend to spread open. And I've seen people who have been in this state over a period of time doing their work that moved to this state. It can be reversed.
And then the other thing was, I just started reading a book today about coconut oil.
Yes.
And how good it is for you.
Yes.
And all the different things it will do. You can
It's a high heat oil. It's an awesome oil, yes.
Raw
Raw coconut oil. Pardon me?
Cancer.
Yeah.
Good for reversing diabetes and all this kind of stuff.
Good on your skin too.
And yes, it's in the book. So,
Yeah. I mean, actual food, you know, what did Hippocrates say? Let food be your medicine, let medicine be your food. By the way, the latest Hippocratic oath that medical doctors take no longer contains, you know, a lot of people say, do no harm. That's not in the Hippocratic oath that doctors take today. That's been removed. Hippocrates said, do no harm. Yes, ma'am.
I've been studying tooth decay for a little while because I have really bad tooth decay. I have multiple cavities in like many of my teeth, and I don't know what has caused it, but I've done research on different people who have studied it, like Weston A. Price. He was a dentist who traveled around the world and studied different tribes and things,
Yes.
and he noticed a similarity between most tribes is that they eat meat. And I was vegetarian for 9 years, so I think that might have to do with it. And from what I personally studied is that there's minerals and vitamins in meat that you don't get in vegetables, like riboflavin and different things, whatever.
Well,
So-
okay, let's hold the thought. Where do you suppose the cow gets those things? Does it just come out of the air? Or does it come from what they eat? The cow can eat a mono diet of grass and build a 2,000-pound, well-muscled, strong bone structure on a mono diet of grass. So something about that doesn't hold water. If you look at the research that Weston Price does, one of the things that the gal who represents it these days, and I know her, doesn't say is, yes, in many of those societies they did eat meat. And that might mean a 3-ounce serving once a week.
Yeah.
It didn't mean you sit down to an 8-ounce steak and 4 eggs and 2 fish, et cetera, every day. No, it didn't. That will decay teeth. That'd be my offer. The acidity will suck the calcium out of the bones of the teeth faster than anything.
So do you have any advice on how to heal tooth decay? Because I don't want to go to a dentist. I
Yes.
feel like I can do it myself.
All of the above. And here's my thought, you know. There are people who, I believe, can, for instance, reach over with their minds to that cup, and pick it up and take a drink. And there are people who've maybe spent years learning to do that. And I believe there are people who can do that. But do I want to spend years doing that when I was given a hand to go over and pick the cup up and take a drink? You know, there are people who can support you with that in the dental profession. There are people who are what's the word I'm looking for? Biological dentists who can help you and support you in doing that. And if you do some research on the internet, I think you'll find there are some natural ways to do it. And the other one is all of the above. Everything we've talked about becomes part of the
It's
process.
it got a lot to do with
But-
minerals. A
but-
colloidal mineral will do that.
Colloidal
I've
mineral,
healed
yes.
my teeth with minerals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay away from
You can
mercury.
read, there's a book, there's a group or a family called, they call themselves Raw Family. Victoria Butinko and her family.
Yeah. I
Her
have
son
one of those.
had quite a bit of tooth decay going on, had those fillings filled. The family, the mother was about, if I remember correctly, something like 60 or 80 pounds overweight. Dad had rheumatoid arthritis, was told he was going to be in a wheelchair within 5 years. One of the kids had tooth decay and diabetes, the other one had asthma. Mom came home one day and said, guess what, kids, we're going to become raw. And everybody went, what? And she shifted the family to raw. They're now called Raw Family. The kids wrote in the book called The Raw Family. And one of the things the young man did was that as he began to eat raw and remineralize his structure, his teeth popped out the fillings and they remineralized and rebuilt. So that would be one of the, and you know, you can check that out. The
And the
book's
dentist
Raw
will tell
Family.
you it can't happen.
Say again?
So
Well, of course,
the dentist
of course.
will tell you it can't happen.
Of course. And, you know, if you're 10 miles down the road, get some help. with those who are there to be real healers. There are people in the dental profession that are real healers. And, you know, don't wait until you can rebuild them all on your own. Get some help. That would be my thought. You know, I think there are a lot of really high integrity people in all of the professions, and unfortunately, a lot of people have been fooled. Get some support and assistance with it. Don't just sit around and say, well, I'll fix it myself. I know other people have done that and said that, and I haven't seen much success in it for most people. That one in Raw Family is one of the most powerful success stories I've heard of in that regard. By the way, the one of them that had asthma no longer has asthma. The other one no longer has diabetes. And the whole family did a trip that they write about where they hiked, slept outdoors. They hiked from the border of Mexico to the border of Canada. And this was with the dad who had rheumatoid arthritis and was going to be in a wheelchair within 5 years. The whole family's health changed. Questions, thoughts, answers, ideas? All right. Well, thank you for your kind attention. It's been an absolute delight. Again, 5 days a week from noon until 1 o'clock. You can talk to Jeannie and I if you start to use these tools. Go to our website, left-hand corner, start here. It'll explain the whole forgiveness process. We have copies of the book. We're happy if you want to buy one. They're $15. I'll be glad to sign it. You're also welcome to go to our website and download it free. It's there in English, German, Russian, Spanish, and Farsi. We've got several other translations that are underway as well. It is not on there. It is translated into Swedish if you happen to speak Swedish, but the Swedish publisher wouldn't let us put it on the website free. But the book is available, and if you start, hit that Start Here button, it'll give you the worksheet process, chapter 24 from my book, and then there are 5 different radio shows where we've walked somebody through the whole process. So you've got 5 different examples of how to start to change your thinking so you know how to forgive. And if you run into challenges with that 5 days a week, you can call that number from noon till 1 o'clock Central Time. Jeannie and I will be on the phone, and we'll be glad to answer your questions, assist, and support you. And of course, you've got a flyer there for Heartland. We're complete with our intensive season for this year, but next summer we'll start a 65-day season around the 19th or 20th of July. We'll start a 65-day residential intensive. And that intensive has 6 different modules, so some people will be there for a 9-day codependence to interdependence, a 9-day why is this happening to me again, a 16-day laws of living, 9-day teacher training. There are a wide variety of different things that we do. And if you want to keep in communication with us, when we do the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, it's always free, it's always open, and when we do that, we'll keep you posted, and you're welcome to come join us next summer for that, for free, to just come to Heartland and do that. So thank you very much. Joanna, I appreciate what you've done to get this started and to make it happen, and what you're doing in the world is awesome. Thank you. I offer my accolades. And Sam, thank you for getting this all together.
Thank you, Michael. I want to thank Michael and Jeannie Ryce again for coming to speak on tonight. It was an excellent presentation. That was great. Thanks again. Thank you, sir.
Delighted.
Other than that, okay, so we're moving forward. Announcements. Next meeting is actually going to be on November the 13th, the second Tuesday of November. It's not going to be here due to the weather. By that time, we suspect that it will be a little cold out here. So
It's a beautiful night tonight. We're
yeah, it turned out good tonight, but that's the expectation. So we moved that meeting, and the next few meetings, until the weather does come back out, will be at this location as of right now, and that's at the White River Valley Cooperative Center up there. It's in their conference center, their conference room. That meeting starts at 6:30, November 13th. We'll email you. If we don't have your email address, we would sure like to get that information from you, or your name and email, of course, a phone number if you'd like to leave that. There should be a paper over there, somewhere over here, that we can get that information from you. Other than that, Eb Johnson, yes.
One thing, the building opens at 6:30, but the meeting starts at 7.
The building opens at 6:30. The meeting starts at 7. And those meetings will move a little quicker. They are on a timer, of course, as the facility would not be open. So please come and join us there at the meeting. We would love to have you in November. We're going to be doing a lot of brainstorming for this next spring. This is really going to be that's the focus of what we do. Essentially, is in the when it's time to grow stuff. So, anyways, we do have donations, a little area for donations, and we welcome any of those, and thank you ahead of time.
And tickets if you want to go nuts.
We have tickets if you want to go nuts,
Right.
and we mean that literally.
Anybody who hasn't
Tickets for
gotten their
nuts.
mailing list that
So.
wants to be. Anybody not get the